Review. So this course stands at the intersection of three large complexes. One is the Hebrew Bible, which I tried to do last week, give you a brief bird's eye survey of what's in the Bible. We didn't talk about its importance yet, but that's coming up very soon. But we did speak about what's in the Bible. It's an anthology of various books, written mostly in Hebrew, in the land of Israel. I left out those two key facts. Written in the land of Israel, mostly in Hebrew, during the first millennium BCE. And if you are a traditionalist, they're early in the first millennium BCE. And if you are a modern Bible scholar, you would put them in the middle or further down in the first millennium BCE. So that's the Bible, an anthology of writings. We took care of that. Now this week I'm looking at what is Judaism, that's today, and what is Christianity on Friday. Right? And then we'll proceed next week to talk about biblical interpretation, how Jews and Christians read the Bible, and then we're finally ready to get to work and to discuss our theme of the course. So I begin here with a small note about how many Jews there are in the world. I'm not going to bother to read that, you can read it too, but now we begin with a very important methodological note. When I'm describing Judaism, which is today, Christianity on Friday, what are we describing? Or we know what's important, how do you know it when you see it? If you are a believer, Jew in this case, Christian on Friday, if you are a believer, then of course you believe that this ism exists out there. I.e., there's something called Judaism that came down from heaven, Moses, God, prophets, Bible, something or other, and that gives us Judaism. And then we can measure the behavior of Jews vis-a-vis that Judaism. We can measure their beliefs. Are they true to Judaism or are they false? Have they rebelled or have they been authentic, legitimate heirs? Do they follow in the ways of the Judaism or not? As if Judaism then becomes a hypostasized reality. That's a fancy schmancy word. We'll come back to the word hypostasis in a few weeks, not to worry. If, however, you are a modern Bible scholar or an academic historian, moi, for example, in spite of the Jewish beanie on my head, if you are an academic historian, then of course you realize that there is no ism. Isms don't exist in the abstract. Isms don't exist in the air. Isms only exist insofar as they are anchored in society, anchored in time, space, and history. Or to put it in extreme fashion, Judaism does not exist. Jews exist. Christianity does not exist. Christians exist. And I only know what Judaism is when I look and see what Jews think, do, behave, believe, social networks they create, political institutions they construct, what authorities Jewish society produces, etc. That I can study as a historian. And at some point I can say Judaism is what these people are saying, doing, thinking, believing, etc. I can do the same thing for Christianity. So I will, in this course, we'll be routinely talking about Judaism over here and Christianity over there. But when we say that, what we really mean, of course, is Jews, what they say, do, think, believe, and Christians, what they say, do, think, believe. And a shorthand for what these Jews are saying, doing, and thinking and believing, well, the shorthand is Judaism. And a shorthand for what the Christians are saying, doing, thinking, and believing is Christianity. In other words, put it more extremely, I don't know what Judaism really is. And I don't know what Christianity really is. And you know what? You don't either. Because I'm not a prophet. I don't have a revelation from God telling me what Judaism is or isn't, what Christianity is or isn't. And I have no way to know what is the authentic or real, genuine, legitimate Judaism and the authentic, genuine, legitimate Christianity. Only a believer knows. And those of us who are not so fortunate as to be believers, or those of us who are fortunate enough to be academic historians, we don't know. That goes into a different part of the brain. So we're going to talk about what Jews have classically thought and believed. Knowing, of course, that their beliefs will change over time, and have changed over time, and are often as not the product of local circumstance. just as in the case of Christianity. Christian beliefs have changed over time. Christian notions of themselves, of the other, have changed over time. Certainly Christian ideas about Jesus Christ have changed over time. And I, of course, as a historian, can't come and tell you what's the real Christian message, or the real Jewish message. I can simply observe that in century X, in time X, place Y, many, most, some, all Christians believe this. Just as I can say, in certain times and places, most, many, most, some, all Jews believe this, did that. Okay, if you're interested in this, you should take a course on religion, or take a course on any of these isms. This could be a philosophical type course, right? The same thing applies to Marxism. Any ism you can think of. Does it really exist, or is it simply a product of social circumstances, a function of social reality? I would say that's what it is. In the abstract, these things don't exist at all, except insofar as believers wish them to exist, want them to exist, and believe in them. That itself is a historical phenomenon. Okay, you have any questions on this? These are deep waters here. I'm just going to, in other words, we blundered into a very serious methodological problem, and I'm going to blunder my way out and keep going. You're all very docile today. Okay, that's fine. Docility is good sometimes. Okay, so we're going to talk about Jews today, Christians on Friday, and if occasionally I slip and talk about Judaism, you will understand that it's just a shorthand for what Jews are saying, doing, and thinking. Okay, that's my summary of these opening first page on the notes, which I rearranged. To get all the big stuff? Yeah, I got the big stuff. Okay, so I'm going to talk about truth claims. We could, when talking about Judaism and Christianity, we could talk about lifestyle, we could talk about church and synagogue architecture, we could talk about music, we could talk about food, we could talk about lots of things, right? But that's not what I want to talk about. Our course will be focusing on truth claims, i.e., that which Jews say is true, and insofar as these are Jews saying it, it's Judaism. In contrast with what Christians are saying, advancing various truth claims, and insofar as Christians are saying this, it's Christianity. So that's where I'm interested in this course. Where are these truth claims to be found? In the big books. The sociologists call the big tradition, as opposed to the little tradition. You know what I mean? Little tradition is the little cakes that you make for Easter. Little tradition is how you decorate your Christmas tree. Big tradition is what you believe about Jesus Christ. Got it? So we're going to do now the big traditions, right? What the big books say, right? We're not paying attention to Jewish folk customs and superstitions, which are fun too, but okay. Jewish truth claims. Here we go. Bottom of the first page. The main truth claims of Judaism cluster around three topics: God, Torah, Israel. This is not my brilliant insight. This is the brilliant insight of Franz Rosenzweig. But we don't need to go there at the moment. So, God, Torah, Israel. If I have to sum up under three heading, under sort of capsule formula, I would say here we could see the truth claims of Judaism. In other words, what Jews believe. Or, if you like, what Jews are supposed to believe. Okay, God, Torah, Israel. Let's discuss these big three. These are the big headings. And I deliberately constructed this so as to be parallel to God, Christ, Church on the Christian side. Right? That's what we'll do Friday. So keep that in mind. God, Christ, Church over here. God, Torah, Israel over here. So, God. The Bible and all classical Jewish texts are suffused, like that word, with a belief in God. As I mentioned, the 24 books of the Hebrew Bible, virtually all of them, 22 out of the 24 books, are books that are suffused with a belief in God. The divine presence is palpable. even if the author is in fact struggling with the divine presence, as most famously in the book of Job. Or even if the author is critical of the way the world is being run, as is the author of Ecclesiastes. But 22 of the 24 books have a palpable sense of God's presence. I'm referring to that as belief in. Belief in. Namely, trust, confidence, a feeling or a sense of reality. Right? What perhaps we might call, in Christian theology, real presence of God. Okay, footnote, 22 out of the 24. What are the two books in which the divine presence is absent or nearly so? They are the two little books of the Song of Songs, which seems to be a collection of love poetry, when read on the literal level, and the book of Esther, where a whole story takes place and the God is nowhere mentioned. Okay, these are well-known problems, but I'm not going to worry about them. Okay, but you should perhaps look at them. They're actually quite intriguing little books, how they get to be in the Bible. Okay, the other 22 are suffused belief in God. Trust, confidence. What you don't have in the Bible or in classical texts is belief that. I'll come back to that in 1 second. You have belief in, not belief that. What do I mean by believe that? Statements such as, I believe that God is X. Or we believe that God is not Y. Or we believe that God does X. Or we believe that God does not do Y. We might call propositional language. Right? Language in which the texts or the speakers tell us what they think about what God is or is not, what God can, cannot do. Propositions, what does God have a body? Does God look? What does God look like? Is God eternal? Did God create the world? And if so, the propositional language, how that would have worked. That kind of talk you will not find anywhere in the Hebrew Bible. Belief in God, trust, confidence, faith, sense of reality, yes. Belief that, statements about God, you will find nowhere in the Hebrew Bible. In fact, you will not find them anywhere in classical Jewish texts from antiquity, the formative texts. The man who claimed that Judaism is, in fact, a series of belief that propositions is Maimonides. We will not be spending too much time with Maimonides, but he is the 800-pound gorilla here, and we can't ignore him. So we have to at least mention him, and then hope he'll go away quietly. So Maimonides was the greatest Jewish philosopher of the High Middle Ages, and one could argue the greatest Jewish philosopher ever. Right? Maimonides spent his entire life in the Islamic sphere, the Islamic orbit, being born in Islamic Spain, and dying in Egypt. 1138 to 1204. Maimonides did many different things. It's absolutely amazing what the man accomplished in his life. It's even more amazing because it seems to have been born in 1138. When I went to school, we thought he was born in 1135, but he lost 3 years when we redid the chronology, and he still got everything done. So, just an amazing guy. Anyway, for our purposes, what's important is that Maimonides is the first, not the very first, but certainly the big one, who argues that Judaism, everything else to the contrary notwithstanding, is in fact a series of propositional statements about God. Judaism can be summarized as a series of truth claims. I believe that. Believe that statements, which Maimonides summarizes famously in his 13 principles of belief. Right, which I gave you a link to the page, and now it's readily available on the course page itself, under course readings. Click, 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 and you'll find it. Right, a series of 13 claims. Before Maimonides, the classical Jewish texts, of course, have belief in God, but they didn't think that you fulfilled your Jewish destiny by sitting around and philosophically arguing about God with propositional statements. No, what you did was you studied the Torah, you perform the commandments, the mitzvot, you live the Jewish life, you study the sacred texts, and that's about all. But nobody sat around worrying whether God does or does not have a body. The Maimonides came along and said, no, what Judaism really is about are these propositional statements about, I believe that God is this. And out of the 13, as all the commentaries discuss, the first 5, at least, Maimonides would say are, not only are they true, not only are they the essence of Judaism, or the basic message of Judaism, but these 5, Maimonides says quite explicitly, are claims that, to use a word that to use a modern word, not a word he used, these are rational. I.e., these are statements, propositions, that an educated person can prove. What are these 5 statements? Here they are. 1, God exists. 2, God is a unity. 3, God has no body. 4, God is eternal. 5, God alone is to be worshipped. For Maimonides, these are not dogmas. Dogmas, Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary, SV dogma. Now, you see there's a whole range of meanings to the word dogma, but we use the word dogma, meaning C usually is lurking not far beneath the surface. A point of view or tenet, by the way, see the word tenet, T-E-N-E-T. This is not a person who leases an apartment. Please make sure you spell this correctly. Right? A point of view or tenet put forth as authoritative without adequate grounds. As if I believe it because I believe it and that's why. For Maimonides, these are not beliefs that we believe because we feel like it. We believe these things because A, they are true, and B, I can show you that they're true. I can argue propositionally. I'll give you proofs that God exists. And for Maimonides, at least, these proofs are adequate and convincing. You and I might not be convinced, perhaps, but for his point of view, they are convincing. And in fact, he says, and if you don't find them convincing, then you should study harder and work harder until you realize that they are convincing. That's why Maimonides says there is a commandment to believe in God, Maimonides says. The commandment is not to suspend disbelief. No, the commandment is to believe, to work at it hard, study philosophy, think and work until you too realize that God exists, because God has to exist. God cannot not exist. That's Maimonides. And this I would respectfully say, with all due respect to Maimonides, Maimonides has overturned the plate, to use a rabbinic idiom. He's turned the whole cup upside down. All of a sudden, we, for the last millennium and more, we Jews had thought that all you need to do is to have a belief, trust, faith, confidence in God, do the commandments, study Torah, and that's all you need to do, and then we've done our job. Now Maimonides tells us, no, we Jews have to sit around and be philosophers in order to prove propositionally these truths about God. Everybody after Maimonides argues with Maimonides. Right? All post-Maimonidean Jewish philosophy is one long sustained argument with Maimonides. I believe this, I think Maimonides is right about that. There aren't 13 beliefs, there are only 7. There aren't 7, there are only 3. You can prove these to be true this way, no, that proves to be true that way, no, this way you can't prove, etc. But the point is, when we get to Christianity on Friday, just to anticipate my hand, Christianity early on becomes a system of propositional truth claims. Notably in the Nicene Creed, which we'll look at on Friday, in which Christians say flat out, I believe that. I believe in God who, followed by statements, and in Christ, followed by descriptions. Right, Christianity early on gets to be summarized as a series of propositional truth claims, whereas Jews have to wait for a long time before someone thinks, I'm going to take Judaism and turn it into a series of propositional truth claims. Why did it take so long? Interesting question. But part of the answer, of course, is to respond to Christianity and Islam. When Maimonides is writing in the 12th century, right, by this point, he is living in a society where Jews, Christians, and Muslims are all talking to each other. And as far as he's concerned, Judaism has to, what shall we say, not clean up its act, but Judaism has to raise this level of discourse. If you're going to convince young Jews in the 12th century that Judaism is in fact a serious intellectual system, equally serious with Christianity and Islam. So when Maimonides writes these propositional claims, of these 13 claims, he in fact has his eye on Christianity and his eye on Islam. Just to anticipate, and I'll move ahead. God is a unity. When he explains what God as a unity is, we know exactly what Maimonides means. It's not Christianity. Because Christianity claims that they believe in God as a unity, but of course, it's not a unity at all. It's three. And three is not one. Just as the other beliefs, past number 5, is along a series of beliefs about prophecy, which are clearly designed to show why we Jews don't believe in Islam. Because we don't believe that Muhammad was the greatest of the prophets. Okay. That's God. Questions? Nobody has a question now. I know for sure you're all asleep. Or you all don't care. Or you're all taking the wrong course. Or you're all, I don't know, browbeaten into submission. That's it. Ah, yes, a volunteer.
How did he manage to gain so much prominence when Maimonides has really changed?
Excellent question. How does a revolutionary who takes the Jewish tradition and then bends it with 2 hands and reshapes it, why don't they dismiss him as a madman, as a lunatic? Because you couldn't. He's an 800-pound gorilla, right? Everybody knew this man was a genius. He's not like Mozart, who dies, and is buried in a pauper's grave. No. Everybody knows this man is a genius. And Maimonides also has, as his trump card, is the fact that he's also an expert in all of Jewish law. Right? And wrote an encyclopedic law code of all of Jewish law. And everybody realized instantly that this was a man who speaks with authority. But he's a complicated guy, right? You'd think the man who writes Encyclopedia of Jewish Law is going to be an old-time, hidebound traditionalist. He's not. Everything he touches, he plays with it. It's not the same. It's just amazing. Anyway, people realize you got to take him seriously. But the whole next century after his death, there's something called a Maimonidean controversy. The earliest cases of book burning in the High Middle Ages are Jews burning the books of Maimonides. Passions ran high. Okay, that's what. Yes?
So, in today's world, do people generally agree with these 13 principles, or is it still just an ongoing discussion of whether he's right or wrong?
Excellent question, right? Jews to this day argue still. Here it is, 800 years later? And we're still arguing with Maimonides, right? The dust hasn't settled yet. Some traditional Jewish philosophers argue that the only firm basis we modern Jews have to understand Jewish truth claims is to rely on Maimonides, because that's our only firm, our firm rock on which to stand. Others, of course, say modern Jews can't believe these things. It's crazy. We're not 13th century, 12th century philosophers. We don't think it this way. Who could talk this way? Yeah, those are the 2 extreme positions.
Okay.
With a whole series of intermediate positions.
Okay.
He has a whole bunch of nasty things to say, Maimonides does, both about Jews who don't believe these things, and not to mention about Christians and Muslims too. But hey, he's living in a pre-ecumenical age. He's allowed.
Right.
So the question is, how do we modern Jews extract truth claims from Maimonides? So that's a tough one. We're still working on it.
Okay.
Okay, another quick question. Okay, so that's God. So, I've already given you a clear sense of the difference between reading classical Jewish texts, which don't have philosophical arguments about God. By the time you get to the High Middle Ages, you do. So Jewish truth claims involve belief in God, trust, confidence, faith in God, as well as philosophical propositions, if you are a Maimonidean. Then you have Torah. Or if you follow an Ashkenazi mode of pronunciation, Ashkenazi. All right, I don't have time to deal with that. If you follow a European Jewish mode of pronunciation, Torah. Right. But the right way to say it is Torah. Okay? If you hear Jews talking on the street, they might use the word Torah. Depends where you're coming from. I was brought up saying Torah. But so, what does Torah mean? Well, Torah is a book. We've already looked at that book. Right? The first 5 books of the Bible are the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch, the 5 scrolls, 5 books. Right? That's the Torah, the book. Second means laws and commandments, 3 oral traditions for Judaism. This is discussed partially in your reading. Let's go over these things. So Torah is the book. Right? Did that already. 2. Torah can be used in the sense of laws and commandments. I already referred to the fact that Christians, to this day, translate the word Torah as law. Right? Then it's not just Christians. Here they're following Greek-speaking Jews of antiquity who also translated the word Torah as nomos. Nomos equals law. Now, literally speaking, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, is not just law, as I mentioned last time. It's also narrative. The basic frame is a narrative. But embedded within this frame, within these 5 books, are substantial bodies of laws, which in Jewish language are called commandments. Right? Commandments. Thou shalt not. Okay? These can be referred to as laws or commandments. Of course, of the commandments, 10 are very famous. The 10 commandments. Right? 10 are very famous, but of course the Torah has hundreds and hundreds of commandments. How many commandments are there? Well, Maimonides and all his other medieval confreres agreed that it contains 613 commandments. And then they spent enormous amounts of intellectual energy trying to calculate precisely how you get to 613, when any reader will tell you the way more than 613. But anyway, that's a medieval obsession with trying to come up with precisely the number. Anyway, we have lots and lots of commandments. Lots and lots of laws. The important thing for our purposes is that these laws include a lot more than just what you and I would call laws. Here I'm giving you a brief survey of different kinds of laws, commandments, that you are found in the Torah, in the 5 books. We have laws about theology. You shall have no other God beside me. Maimonides already mentioned. Prohibition of image worship. We have ethics, love your neighbor as yourself, which comes out of Leviticus 19. We have ritual laws, most famously Sabbath, festivals, food laws, right? Don't eat pork, don't eat shellfish, don't eat meat with dairy. Well, that's a complicated one. Then we have sacred laws, right? Laws about the central shrine, the priestly caste, the worship of the Lord in the essential institutions, laws of purity, impurity, laws of sacred laws. We have civil laws in the Torah. My ox scores your ox. Or translate that into modern times, my car hits your car. Right? Let's see, torts. I punch you in the nose. Or in modern terms, I punch you in the nose. Right. Buying and selling land. Okay, etc. This is what we call civil law. We have criminal law, murder, theft, kidnapping, and so on. Just good old-fashioned criminal law. We have public law. Public law meaning laws regarding the running of the state. We have the king. We have judges. We have prophet, referred to in the book of Deuteronomy in 2 different paragraphs. Last but not least, we have marriage law, governing precisely marriage and divorce, status of children and the rest, for prohibited marriages, permitted marriages, laws regarding governing sexual relations, etc. All these things we'll call law, but of course us Americans, right, we sense some of these things are law, and some of these things aren't law at all, but in the eyes of the Torah, it's all law. Namely, the commandment to observe the Sabbath day is no less important than honoring your father or mother or loving your neighbor as yourself. The language is the same. It's all law. It's all commandment. as we'll see, when Christians read the Torah, 5 books, they, unlike the Jews, they wanted to pick and choose. Jews claim, and traditional Jews claim still, that all of these laws are still operative. Right? These are eternal laws. These are laws given by God to Moses at Mount Sinai. Many modern Jews would have trouble with that, but at least they would say these are laws were meant to be observed everywhere and always by Jews to the best of our ability. Some laws we Jews can't observe anymore. For example, we don't have an animal sacrifices at the central shrine because we no longer have a temple in Jerusalem, since the Romans took care of it in the year 70 CE. And since then we've had no temple, consequently no temple or sacrifices. Consequently the priests are out of a job. So Jews named Cohen have to become professors, right, to support themselves because there was no job anymore in the temple, etc. Having said that, though, to the best of our ability, we do try to observe all the commandments. Christians will very early on say, no, some of the commandments we will observe and others we won't because we don't think we need to. They've been replaced, they've been supplanted, they've been upgraded, downgraded, something or other. Right. So we don't need to observe them anymore. Now, footnote, truth be told, Jews also are playing fast and loose with these rules, but at least Jews claim eternal fealty to the laws, whereas Christians come out and say flat out, now that Christ has come in the world, I'll give you a list of the laws that we need to observe, and the rest you can ignore. This is a big theme of our course. It'll be coming up in a couple of weeks. Okay, back to where we are. 3. Oops, better hurry up. 3. The Torah also can mean the written Torah and the oral Torah. This was discussed in your reading. Right? Rabbinic Judaism comes up with the idea. These are in the 1st century CE, AD if you prefer. The early centuries in the classical period which produced classical rabbinic literature. The rabbis come up with the idea of the written Torah and the oral Torah. The written Torah are the 5 books of Moses. The oral Torah is the body of traditions that are not written down in the Torah. So when Moses comes down from Mount Sinai, or those of you who saw the old movie, The 10 Commandments, if you haven't seen it yet, you should rent it over the weekend. It's a blast. Right? So Charlton Heston comes down with the 10 Commandments, right, over his manly chest. Right? What he's also carrying, of course, is the oral Torah, that which is not written down. And the rabbis will tell you that which is not written is just as important as that which is written, in fact, more so. Because the written Torah, the 5 books of Moses, means what we rabbis say it means. And as you know, the interpreter always wins. Because the text can say whatever the text wants to say, but the interpreter will tell you what it really means. And consequently, the interpreter triumphs over the text. That we'll do it next week. That's the oral Torah. Okay, that was in your reading, so I'm going to explain that briefly. Let's make sure we understand the word halacha, which is right over here. So the word halacha are all those details which we rabbis elaborate in order to explain the meaning of the laws. That's halacha. That's the Jewish way. So, for example, the Torah tells you, don't do any work on the Sabbath day. The Torah repeats it several times. So it's right there in the 10 Commandments. The 4th commandment, Exodus chapter 20, verse 9 and 10. Right? Don't do any manner of work on the Sabbath day. Okay, sounds good. However, think about it for 10 seconds. What on earth is work for purposes of this law? What am I not allowed to do on the Sabbath day in order to fulfill the commandment, don't do any work on the Sabbath day? Answer, the Torah doesn't tell you. But we rabbis will tell you. We rabbis will come along and explain precisely that which you may not do, and that which you can do, and that which you can do sort of if you arrange things just precisely so the conditions apply over here, then that would not be prohibited, but over here it would be prohibited. And this, we really don't want you to do it, but if you do it, it's okay. It's not you're not culpable. Right. That's what we call halacha. As the rabbis provide the teeth, the details by which we Jews can implement the commandments of the Torah. Similarly, honor your father and mother. What does that mean? Well, it means honor your father and mother. I know. That means that you shouldn't argue with your father and mother. If your father says to you, you're going to Harvard, and you say back, no, I'm going to Brown. Is that honoring your father and mother? Is that what that means? Well, I'm not sure. What exactly does it mean to honor your father and mother? Well, once again, the text is completely vague. If you want details, you won't find it in the Torah anywhere. You have to go look in rabbinic to the rabbis, our sages, who will tell you precisely what it means. No, you're allowed to argue with your parent on certain kinds of things. You don't always have to agree with them. But it all depends. If your father tells you, do work on the Sabbath day, you very politely say, no, Father, I can't do work on the Sabbath day. Because I must observe that commandment also. Anyway, that's not in the Torah anywhere. This is all spelled out by our sages. That's part of the oral Torah. The Torah that expands upon, interprets, provides details by which we can then understand and implement the written Torah. Last but not least, the word Torah can mean Judaism. Right? Put this whole kit and caboodle together, it's Judaism. Namely, the book, the interpretations, the laws, the requirements, the rituals, the prescriptions, the prescriptions, the proscriptions. Put it all together, that's Judaism. That's how the rabbis often talk. Last but not least, Israel. So I'm not sure I'm running out of time here. I'm going to rearrange this part, so I want to get to the important part. The Bible is about Israel. Who are the people who appear in the pages of the Bible? The people are called Israel. The children of Israel are the people who come out of the Exodus from Egypt. The children of Israel are the people who come and conquer the land of Canaan. The children of Israel set up a kingdom in the land of Canaan, the kingdom of Judah, and the kingdom of Israel, also called the kingdom of Ephraim. But the people are not called Jews. It's Israel. This people of Israel, stand in a very close relationship with God. That same God whom we discussed earlier. And the Bible, the Torah, already begins with a paradox. Paradox. Genesis 1 through 11. God creates the entire world and all that is therein. God punishes all of humanity when they sin. He sends a flood, wiping out humanity to start over again, right, with the figure of Noah. So chapter 1 through 11, we have a universal God who it seems has no favorite. He picks Noah because Noah is righteous, but Noah is basically a second Adam. Right? All humanity goes back to Noah because the sins of the world have brought God to destroy the world in a great flood. All of a sudden, now in Genesis chapter 12, something mysterious happens. Genesis chapter 12, God says to Abraham, go forth from the land of your birth, from your home, and the land that I will show you. And from that point onwards, from Genesis chapter 12, all the way down through the end of the book of Chronicles, in other words, the entire rest of the Hebrew Scriptures, God seems to be peculiarly obsessed with the comings and goings and doings of one particular clan, one particular tribe, one particular group of tribes, one particular people, whom we call the people of Israel, who stand in some very mysterious relationship with this God, who nonetheless is still the universal God. But it just seems to have a lot of attention, time, and energy and attention devoted to this people. Now the Bible nowhere explains this paradox, this tension then between a God who is particular and a God who is universal. Right? A God who creates the entire world and runs it, and a God who seems to have a special relationship with this clan and its descendants. We call that special relationship covenant. came up in your readings. Did I mention that word here somewhere? There it is. People of Israel are the chosen people. They stand in some special relationship with God. What that means is never spelled out, given the fact that the Hebrew Scriptures, as I mentioned earlier, don't speak propositionally, don't speak out truth claims to explain to you what these things mean. It has this phrase that appears a couple of times, and the biblical prophets routinely are working with this tension, that Israel stands in some special obligation towards God. Later Jewish thinkers will, of course, take this material and try to make something out of it. And you had a nice survey, in your reading, which I won't discuss at the moment. Basically, you're left with the idea, is it a privilege or is it an obligation to be a member of God's chosen people, to have a covenantal relationship with God? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Surely it's a good thing, but sometimes it doesn't always feel that way. As in, because God is busy punishing you for your sins, but otherwise God lets slide among other people. The Bible, again, does not explain these things or come up with a systematic explanation, but later Jews and Christians alike will have a very clear idea that there is a group of people who stand in a special relationship with God. And they get that idea from the Bible, not just the Torah, but the prophets and the Ketuvim, the writings also. Except the major difference is that Jews, if I could jump ahead a little piece, have a clear idea that this is an ethnos. This special people is a special people both by dint of the fact that it has the Torah, it has the commandments, it follows God's word in that way, whereas other people don't. But it's also a special people because it is also God's ethnos, God's family, God's people. Christians very quickly lose that, as we'll see. There's very little notion of Christian peoplehood. You don't want to talk about the people, the Christian people. That doesn't really make sense. There is something called the Jewish people, but there's nothing called the Christian people. Whereas both Jews and Christians will claim that we, in fact, are that special people because by dint of our faith, belief, commandments, observances, and the like, right? Jews will keep and will never lose this sense of ethnos, or ethnicity. This is a long, complicated problem, which I don't want to discuss now, but we'll come back to this. And it's not that Christians reject the Jewish chosen people idea. It's just that Christians interpret it in a different way and turn it into something different. Better or worse, I leave for you to determine. But that we'll come back to in some weeks down the road. The key point, I'm going to jump here to this last paragraph because it's already only have 3 minutes. This last paragraph is this. When I'm talking about the Hebrew Bible in this course, I will never, unless I slip, right, refer to its heroes and its people as Jews, or talk about it as Jewish. I wish I had my Hebrew Bible with me to hold it up as my prop. I'll hold up my iPad instead, which has the Bible in it. Because this book is not a Jewish book. It's not a Christian book. Right? This book, right, is about people of Israel who are the intellectual, religious, etc., progenitors, forerunners of the people who later on will emerge and will become Jews, and later on will become Christians. And Jews and Christians later on will each of them turn back to this book and claim to find in this book the roots of their faith, the roots of their observances, right? The proofs of what they believe, both Jews and Christians alike. And insofar as I'm trying to take both of these claims seriously, I'm not going to try to arbitrate and determine who's right and who's wrong. I will simply observe that historically speaking, I don't see Jews in this book, and I don't see Christians in this book. I see the people of Israel in this book, their stories, their travails, right, in this book, and I see the stuff out of which later Jews and later Christians will construct Judaism on the one hand, Christianity on the other, and I can see how that relates to various themes. Jews and Christians, as we will see, are reading the same book but reading different books. I.e., Jews will emphasize certain things, Christians emphasize other things. Jews will say, these are the important books, these are the important points. Christians will say, no, these are the important books, and these are the important points. So, when you went to Hebrew school, they told you that Moses led the Jews out of Egypt. Okay? When you went to Sunday school, in fact, I think Christian Sunday schools often do the same thing, right? They'll tell you that the Hebrew Bible is all about the Jews and the Jewish people. In this course, that's not the way I'm going to talk. I'm going to say the Hebrew Bible is about it's about the Hebrew Bible. It's about the people of the Hebrew Bible. It's about Israelites. Jews and Christians, well, they will come along and each of them will claim parts of this biblical legacy, right? And if you are a Jew, then of course it's the Jewish Bible. If you are a Christian, then of course it's the Old Testament. Okay, everybody, that's about it for today.